はい、こんにちは、バイパーです。今日は病院が深刻な状態になっているので、先生とか他のお見舞いに来ている人たちを治していきたいと思います。それでは行ってみよう。先生たちが病気だったら元も子もないからな。先生たちがいないんだよ。
What on earth happened here? Good evening, Nurse Hawkins.
Good evening, Dr. Reed.
Do you need medical help yourself, Nurse?
I'm afraid I've contracted some illness, Dr. Reed.
Not under my watch, Nurse. Take this. You'll feel better.
Thank you, Dr. Reed.
What can you tell me about the recent commotion in the hospital?
Everybody's afraid. Death has always been a frequent visitor. But murder? How can we cope with that?
As a nurse at this hospital, it is your duty to deal with these things as best you can.
Yeah. Until it's my turn to have blood spread all over the walls. I entered the room first, Dr. Reed. I've seen what that monster did to the woman.
Goodbye, Nurse Hawkins.
この人は大丈夫。ヴァンパイアだから。ヴァンパイアがここに2人いるっていう時点でおかしいからね。
Good evening, Nurse Brannigan.
Good evening, Doctor.
Do you require medical assistance, Nurse?
I will be fine, as soon as I can get some sleep.
Nurse, you won't be able to help people if you're sick. Take this, and do try to get some rest.
I'll try, Dr. Reed. Thank you.
Goodbye, Nurse. Call me if you need assistance.
他の先生たちはどこにいる？
I'm quite busy right now, Dr. Reed.
I don't know what you've heard about me, but I have already proved my value as a practitioner.
I don't question your skills, Dr. Reed, but your motive. Is it money, fame, or are you truly dedicated?
And what exactly is that supposed to mean?
I served in the war just like you. But unlike you, I did not use the wounded to play the modern sorcerer.
Be careful what you insinuate, Dr. Ackroyd.
I only want you to admit you used those men to improve your theories.
Knowledge has always been and will remain our main weapon, and it has always come at a price. And personal initiative.
It is not a question of initiative, it is a question of integrity. These men and women have put their faith in us, Dr. Reed.
It seems you have bad memories of your military service.
I refuse to see this industrial slaughter as scientific progress. War only reveals the worst in men.
We can at least agree on something, Dr. Ackroyd. Do you need my assistance?
Don't be ridiculous. I'm capable of dealing with this myself. I've just not taken the time to do so.
Then you are lucky that I have taken the time to do so. Consider it a gesture of solidarity between professionals.
I wish this hospital could have received as much attention from you, Dr. Reed. We do not see you in surgery very often.
Thank you for your time. We'll talk later.
I will not let you down, my boy.
Good evening, Mr. Fiddick.
Good evening, Dr. Reed. Any news about my operation?
Goodbye for now, Mr. Fiddick. I'll see you later.
I will not let you down, my boy.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Reed. Can I help at all?
No,
Really? Why are you here, then?
I don't want to talk. My throat hurts too much.
I suppose that this pain is the reason you're here. Is someone taking care of you?
Yes. And no.
Could you at least tell me your name, sir?
Mortimer. Mortimer Goswick.
Tell me about yourself, Mr. Goswick.
I don't want to talk, Doctor.
How painful is your throat, Mr. Goswick?
So painful I'd rather not talk at all, Doctor.
I'm sure you realize a doctor and his patient have to communicate, sir. Would it help if I gave you some paper and a pen?
Not really.
I see. Then maybe it's not just your throat that hurts, Mr. Goswick. Perhaps your sore throat is just the consequence of something more hurtful.
Yes, maybe. But I don't want to talk or even write about it now.
Do you need any help?
I'm afraid I may, sir. I don't mean to be a burden.
You are not a burden, sir. Healing you is my responsibility.
And you have my gratitude for that.
What can you tell me about the recent commotion in the hospital?
I had shouting coming from the first floor. I was asleep when it started.
How painful is your throat, Mr. Goswick?
So painful I'd rather not talk at all, Doctor.
I'll let you get some rest, then.
Good evening, sir. Doctor.
Good evening, Doctor. How is my son doing?
Do you require medical attention as well, Mrs. Goswick?
Do you know you're the only one who's asked me this? No, I don't feel well, actually.
Despite what you think about this place, I can tell you with absolute certainty, taking this will help you recover.
Well, at least your reputation seems well deserved. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for this hospital.
What can you tell me about the recent commotion in the hospital?
It's a disgrace. How on earth can patients be attacked in their own rooms?
What can you tell me about yourself, Mrs. Goswick?
Not much to say. Just take care of my Mortimer and I'll cover all the expenses. That's all that matters.
Are you really that rich? Most of the patients here are of a more humble origin, if I may say so.
Yes, thanks to my husband. May he rest in peace. I can cover any needed medical expenses.
May I ask if you have an occupation, Mrs. Goswick?
I'm a teacher by profession. I teach young women who are more ambitious about their futures than their families.
What do you think of your reception here? Any complaints?
I have had the uttermost reservations about this hospital since we arrived. But we had no other choice, considering the state of emergency.
Is there something in particular that's bothering you?
Some of the staff were not especially welcoming. I suspect they're not accustomed to dealing with patients of such social standing.
Tell me more about your arrival at the Pembroke Hospital. What gave you such a bad first impression?
The ambulance driver was quite rude, for a start. And that nurse, Miss Hawkins, seems to have quite a dubious attitude.
What do you mean?
She managed to secure a bed for my son despite the epidemic. It was a relief, but it wasn't cheap.
She charged you For a bed?
Yes, and I paid without question, considering the urgency of the situation.
I share your concern, Mrs. Goswick. Be sure that I'll talk to the people involved.
I don't expect compensation, Dr. Reed. But I'm aware such behavior would not be tolerated in other hospitals.
Goodbye, Mrs. Goswick.
I'm alright.
何十やつだ
Don't waste your time with me.
Good evening, Nurse Hawkins.
Good evening, Dr. Reed.
How is the Pembroke staff coping with the epidemic?
Well, not well. Milton, the ambulance driver, is even more grumpy than usual, especially concerning doctors.
Why does Milton dislike doctors?
I don't know. Just ask him. But be warned, Milton is not the chatty type.
Why is Milton grumpy on a daily basis? Is it just an act?
Milton's not the kind of man who's bothered about a bad reputation, whether he deserved it or not.
How long have you been a nurse?
Well, long enough to see that the epidemic is winning. And no matter how qualified you are, don't tell me you'll change that.
You'd be surprised what dedication can achieve, Nurse Hawkins. In medicine, sometimes we're just a test result away from a miracle.
Sorry, Doctor. I don't want to sound bitter, but I'm just too tired to give a pep talk like Nurse Brannigan.
How would you describe the situation at the Pembroke Hospital?
It's serious. The flu is wreaking havoc amongst the staff and patients. We are running out of everything.
Nurse Hawkins, the Spanish flu won't last forever. Even the Black Plague didn't kill everyone.
I wish I could believe you. But what if this epidemic was worse? What if in the end, nobody was spared?
You must get a hold of yourself, Nurse.
Sorry, I'm exhausted. No one has any idea when this epidemic will be over.
Goodbye, Nurse Hawkins.
他の先生たちはどこにいる？下にいるのかなわけ。
I have wasted too much energy.
Good evening, Dr. Reed. Such a pleasure to see you again.
Do you need medical attention?
Well, the proximity of the dead is not the most healthy company, even if the quiet can be appreciated.
Don't take too many risks with your health, Mr. Chidana. None of us are immune to this disease.
And that is a good thing. Death and disease is a constant reminder of our mortality. But you have my thanks, Dr. Reed.
Goodbye, Mr. Chidana.
地下になんかイベント、地下のアンチジュになんかイベントがあるけど、 どうしようかな。まだあといるかな。この先生たちのところに。
Good evening, Dr. Strickland.
And good evening to you, Dr. Reed. Can I be of any help?
Do you need my medical attention, dear colleague?
I would have been confused if anyone other than you had asked that question, Dr. Reed. But your help is welcomed.
There is no shame in helping each other. We're colleagues, after all.
Many doctors I have known are too cynical to think that way.
Can you tell me anything about the recent commotion in the hospital?
I'm sure it was not your fault, Dr. Reed.
My fault? What do you mean?
Oh, nothing. It's just... I heard it was you who brought the murderer inside our walls. But you couldn't know, could you?
Goodbye, Dr. Strickland.
さあ、あとはこの4人か。1人は確実に、2人か。2人は外にいる。
Good evening, Dr. Tibbets.
Dr. Reed, any good news to share?
Do you need any medical assistance yourself, Doctor?
Yes, indeed. But don't worry, I am perfectly capable of taking care of myself.
I have no doubt about it, but you are still ill all the same. Please, take this medicine.
I appreciate your concern, Dr. Reed. To be honest, I just did not take the time to diagnose myself.
What will you do after your resignation? Do you have a plan?
I always fancied visiting Cyprus. Such a beautiful island. I could buy a house there by the sea, read poetry, and wait for death.
なんちゅう悲しいこと言うねん、この人。
Goodbye, Dr. Tibbets.
この運転手はどこ行った？
Another night with the glorious battalion of Pembroke.
Oh, Jonathan. I cannot believe my eyes. Poor woman. Butchered by some savage scowl.
Yes, and I'm afraid I'm at least partially responsible. The man, the scowl, I brought him here.
Jonathan, how could you say such a thing?
Forgive me if I feel despondent, but there seems to be no end to the suffering and death that surrounds us.
I'm always here for you, Jonathan.
What do you know of Ascalon? I was threatened by a creature, a vampire in Whitechapel, stating I had to obey the law of conduct.
What more can you tell me about him?
He was bigger than a man, huge in fact. He seemed to radiate violence. I thought he was going to tear me apart. Then he vanished.
Fergal, the executioner of Ascalon. You were fortunate he was not after you, but rather out doing his master's bidding.
What is Ascalon?
The Ascalon Club are the most powerful vampires in Britain and exert tremendous influence. Take my advice and stay well away.
Have you embraced this woman? like the other patient, this Mr. Renfield?
Her name was Amelia. And no, I did not kill her. I vowed a very long time ago that I would never take another life, unless they ask.
Temptation surrounds us. Rich, vital. How can you resist?
Over the years, any pleasure I once gleaned from feeding is long gone. I drink for sustenance. And though I still thirst for more, I restrain myself.
Is there sufficient vitality in the blood of the sick and dying patients?
Yes, Jonathan. The hunger gnaws at me every waking hour. Frankly, I'm starving.
I have experienced a certain difficulty when faced with holy symbols or trying to enter religious buildings. Have you?
Now that's quite a question. I don't know why, but yes, it has happened to me.
Aren't you frightened?
Very little scares me, my dear. To be compelled to avoid symbols of faith does not concern me.
Is this a sign? The hand of God in action? Are we repellent unto heaven?
I don't have the answers, Jonathan. But I believe superstition and magic is just fact awaiting the lens of science.
Thank you, my lady. I hope to see you again soon. Good evening, Milton.
Good evening, Doctor. Still trying to save lives?
Do you need any medical help, Milton?
I'm afraid I do. Like everyone in this hospital. It's a sad state of affairs when even the hospital workers are worried about disease.
I'll see you later.
Yeah. I'm sure you say the same thing to everyone in town.
Goodbye, Milton.
次回はアンチジョンっていうミッションをこなしていきたいと思います。それではバイバイ。